Story 1. Sometimes it's easier to smile than to explain why you're drowning. Story 2. I tried once. I got "everyone has bad days" as a response. I felt so invalidated and uncared for that I did not try again. Story 3. At some point you realize you will never be okay, and it is exhausting to tell people repeatedly. You feel like a broken record. Story 4. Because no one really cares so long as life runs smoothly for them. Story 5. I do not want to hear the cliché responses. I do not want to be fixed. I am tired of people who do not listen and who correct me before I finish speaking. I do not want what I say to be used later to invalidate me. Story 6. It usually just turns into the suffering Olympics, and I am not up for competing. Story 7. It is not their business, and there is nothing they can do anyway. Story 8. People do not actually care. I notice how those around me act when I am going through something and ask for help with small tasks. No one has ever enthusiastically or proactively helped me. On the rare occasions when they agree to help, they either flake at the last minute or do the work half-heartedly. So I am done. Story 9. 1. I've not been okay for so long. I figure it's just a Tuesday for them. 2. I also think they are tired of hearing about it. 3. I feel unworthy of help, so I withdraw instead. Story 10. I am told someone else has it worse, and I walk away feeling guilty and unwell. Story 11. My mom told me this a lot growing up. Nobody cares about your problems like you do. I have found it is easier to just pretend I am fine than to be vulnerable and ask for help. Story 12. I do not want to unload my trauma on my loved ones. They are not equipped or trained. I plan to discuss my trauma with a therapist soon. Story 13. I didn't have a chance. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I don't keep secrets. And my family could tell I was struggling. Being this open emotionally and honest about many things is not all sunshine and rainbows. It has led to a lot of trust issues. The best thing I ever did was talk about my mental health and my issues. I've got a long way to go, but I've come so fucking far. Tell someone, anyone. Story 14. What's the point? We all have problems. No one actually cares unless it affects them. Humans are selfish. Story 15. I tried, but I was invalidated with statements like someone out there has it worse. Everyone has bad days, and what more could you need? You have food and a roof over your head. When I started dating, I thought they would care. But they responded, "You're annoying," okay, or Now I trust almost no one. Story 16. If I told anyone, I would get yelled at. When I eventually told friends, I yelled at them. If someone is hurt every time the conversation happens, I might as well keep it to myself. Story 17. This is just a rough idea, but maybe it is difficult to start the conversation. Also, are they able to accommodate you in that moment? Maybe they have other commitments and cannot give you 100%. It is easier to stay silent. Story 18. Platitudes do nothing for me. Saying you are strong or that things always get better does not help. Story 19. I had been the rock for so many people, so how could I be strong for them if I was crumbling? When I asked for help, I was accused of being lazy. It ended a 13-year relationship. Story 21. That has never worked well for me in the past. 2. What do I expect someone else to do about it? I am in control of my own happiness. Story 21. I have asked for help and I still do. I have even said I need help and they just say, "Oh, sorry." I then feel like I have burdened them with my problems, so I say it is all good. I am not okay. I have lost myself. How do you find your way back when you are so far gone? Story 22. People like to gossip. You cannot trust them. If I open up to you, it is not permission for you to share it with others. Story 23. Every time I have opened up to someone, it has affected me negatively. Never again. Story 24. I reached a point where talking about it did not help anymore. Nothing changes when I say it. I still feel bad, and I might drag down the people I love. Everyone struggles to understand me anyway. I am a 28-year-old autistic person, so I did not have an overly dramatic puberty phase but have neurodivergent traits. Story 25. No one cares, and when you do talk about it, They think you are only thinking about yourself and that their issues are bigger and more severe than yours. I am tired of it. Story 26. Who actually cares? People already have their own problems. Story 27. You are either ignored, dismissed, or told that someone else had it worse and is fine now. You are told to get over it or that you are overreacting. Everyone has their own issues and is not really interested in taking on someone else's problems. I usually keep mine to myself. I'm fine. Story 28. I did. I received many empty platitudes and was told how much worse others have it. It confirmed that no one is interested in me beyond the service I provide to them. Story 29. I thought it was normal. Nobody else seemed okay. And I had been not okay for so long that when it got worse, my baseline for what was tolerable was abysmally low. Even feeling a little not okay calls for you to examine your reality and make small changes. Just because others ignore or dismiss your calls for help does not mean you should ignore them. Listen to yourself, acknowledge your feelings, and seek self-acceptance. A small step in the right direction can change your trajectory. Continuing as you are might take you further from what matters. Godspeed out there. Story 30. Apparently my needs don't matter at all, and I live with ignorant neurotypicals, so why bother, to be honest? Story 31. I do it all the time. People do not care or do not believe me. My mother asked what I was looking forward to in the future. I said I wanted to be the year 2086 because I doubt I will live to be 100, and that would be great. I tell people that I do not have any goals or plans for the future and do not want any. When a friend and I discussed how the town is getting more dangerous, I explained that I feel I should get a firearm just in case, but I cannot guarantee I would not use it on myself. When I told my doctor that I sleep as long and as much as possible, so I can be awake and aware as little as possible, they just laugh or say, "Oh, you are so bad. I am sorry you are feeling this way. If you are thinking about harming yourself or are in immediate danger, please call your local emergency number now." If you are in the United States, you can call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you are elsewhere, please contact your local emergency services or a local crisis line. Consider telling someone you trust or your healthcare provider. If you would like, I can help find resources or crisis services in your area. Story 32. I am the kind of person who is shy and handles all my problems on my own. Everything changed when I met my ministry, and I began sharing everything with my brothers and sisters in faith. Story 33. When I told the one person who was supposed to care the most, he said I did not need therapy. I assumed everyone struggled as I did and that I just needed to figure it out. I was wrong. Story 34. It is easier and better to suffer in silence than to open up to people who do not care and will act as if you were trying to hurt them. My mother thinks my wife, who genuinely cares and wants to help me through depression instead of making it worse, stole me from her and insists it was not me fleeing as if my life depended on it, when in fact it did. Story 35. The only person I could tell is my best friend, and she regularly abandons me, especially when she knows I am going through something. Story 36. It's none of their business. I'm an adult and I can deal with my own problems. Story 37. What is the point if they are not going to care and will use it against you? Story 38. Sometimes someone else gets there first and is prioritized over everything, so it seems like you're asking for attention when you just need a hand. Story 39. Honestly, I don't really know. I think it is because I don't like to tell people about my problems, no matter how severe. Some days it just feels overwhelming, so I end up talking to myself about it. Story 40. Because they do not care and will not understand, I deal with my problems alone. My problems are always less severe than my friends', so I feel bad complaining about things they would rather not have. Story 41. My burden should not be your burden. It is easier for me to push it down and deal with it than to make you worry or feel bad. Story 42. Because no one cares, and I do not want to burden people with my self-caused issues. I am sorry you are feeling this way. If you are thinking about harming yourself or are in immediate danger, please call your local emergency number now. In the United States, call or text 988. In the United Kingdom, call Samaritans at 116 123. In Australia, call Lifeline at 13 11 14. If you would like, I can help you find support in your area or listen to what is going on. Story 43. I am a child of abuse, and I was not supposed to be heard. Story 44. In my culture, men are not supposed to have feelings to begin with, let alone share them. Story 45. I don't know if anyone actually cares. Imagine telling someone that you're not okay and they blankly stare at you or don't attempt to comfort you. It's simply easier to pretend that you're fine. Story 46. I didn't want to bother anyone. They're busy and have their own issues. Story 47. Because nobody cares. I don't have any friends. If I don't initiate contact, that's the last I ever hear from anyone. I'm the last resort when nobody else is available. I'll die cold and alone in my house and nobody will know for months. If there's a funeral, nobody will turn up. Someone might hear about it and think, oh no. But 10 seconds later, they will be back to their day. They say they care, but when push comes to shove, they crumble. God, tonight is such a shit night. If you are thinking about harming yourself or are in immediate danger, please call your local emergency number now. If you are in the United States, call or text 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Would you like to talk about how you're feeling? Story 48. Either no one cares, or they are offended that I am not okay. Story 49. It often feels like people do not care. Most people are self-absorbed and self-focused. I have a small group of friends who have known each other for years. We are older and spread across the country with our own families. Each of us has more responsibility now than when we were young. Every so often, usually when I am not feeling okay, I send a text to our group saying I miss you all, I love you all, and asking how everyone is. No one ever asks me or reciprocates. Some of us are not okay, and people who are okay either do not know how it feels, do not have the time or energy to deal with it, or do not know how to respond. So we say we are fine when we are definitely not fine. Story 50. I am a big girl and capable of handling my own affairs. Comforting words from people close to me do not help. If anything, they make me feel sorry for myself rather than helping me address the situation and find a solution to my problems. Story 51. It is too hard to explain to people who have never experienced depression. Story 52. Everyone tells me to man up. I also lost jobs when it was discovered I went to therapy. Story 53. When my dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer and I had 3 animals that were sick, all unrelated, I had to spend $2,000 on life-saving care for them combined. I sometimes ranted about it in the group chat. Only one friend responded. The other 2 read my messages without replying. I have known all of them for over a decade, so that stung because it felt like they did not care. One night, while I was driving to the emergency veterinarian with my rabbit around midnight, I told them all what was happening. Then a friend called the group chat to plan a trip to my cabin. I said I could not deal with this right now and hung up. The next day, someone who was supposedly my best friend told me I had to put a trigger warning before all my venting in the group chat or make a separate chat for it, because our group chat was apparently just for planning things, which was news to me. I later found out she had called everyone in the group chat to talk about my venting and how wrong I was for doing it. So I stopped talking about my life and stopped planning activities with them because I was not going to put effort into superficial friendships. We have not talked or hung out in months because I was the only one who planned things or started conversations. At the same time, my now former boyfriend did not know how to handle the news about my dad. He would avoid me, hang up on me while I was crying, and refused to visit my house since I still lived with my parents and he did not want to see my dad. To summarize, people stopped talking to me when my dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer, so now I feel like a burden anytime I try to talk about my feelings, and I physically cannot bring myself to do it because I am afraid the few people I have left will leave too. Story 54. Honestly, I am better off dealing with it myself. I just need time. I will not give anyone ammunition to use against me later. Story 55. I've gotten plenty of "I'm here if you need to talk" messages from online acquaintances. I really just need a hug. Story 56. No one can make you feel okay, and if they cannot help you, there is no point. Story 57. What can someone else do for me when I am fighting an internal battle? They cannot say or do anything to make me feel better in the moment, so I might keep the burden to myself rather than create unrest for someone who is not a therapist. Get yourself into therapy. It will not make you feel better right away, but over time you will gain perspective and begin to feel better. You might need help from medications to feel better in the short term while you work toward the root causes of how you are feeling. Eventually, if you engage in the process and do the work, you may not need the medications anymore. It is possible to feel better. Story 58. When I try, everyone says there is nothing wrong with you. Story 59. My parents did not want me as I am. They wanted their child, even though I had not been a child for decades. So I played the role and pretended to be the person they needed me to be. I think it was kinder that way for both of us. They did not have to worry, and I did not face endless interrogation. I improved, mostly. I could never fully recover. In the end, my decision not to tell them became an unforeseen blessing. Story 60. You can tell people you are not okay, as long as you do not expect them to fix you. The most they can do is listen. Sometimes I tell people if I feel comfortable with them, only if they will not use it against me in an argument. I would never talk to family about how I am feeling for that reason. They did that, so I no longer trust them with that type of conversation. If you are genuinely suffering, seek professional help when it is available to you. Story 61. 1. Who would I tell? 2. Why would they care? 3. Will they make anything better, or just make me feel worse? 4. I want to keep my few remaining friends and not be a source of negativity. These were all reasons I had in the past. Story 62. I keep it to myself most of the time because the people who care cannot help and would only feel worse. Story 63. I told my boss, and that cost me points on my next evaluation. Story 64. My parents always told me not to be a burden. Saying I was not okay felt like being a burden. I also could not end my life because that would leave others to deal with the mess. I am sorry you are feeling this way. If you are thinking about hurting yourself or are in immediate danger, please call your local emergency number now. If you are in the United States or Canada, you can call or text 988 for immediate help. If you are in the United Kingdom, you can call Samaritans at 116 123. I can help you find local crisis resources or stay with you here. Are you safe right now? Story 65. My actions speak for themselves. Unfortunately, most of it is because I know that none of them can help. Story 66. They were going through a difficult time and I could wait. Story 67. Why would I tell anyone that I wasn't okay? That's my real question. Story 68. Most people are not listening. Why waste your energy? It is better to play some music and work through what is going on in a constructive manner. Story 69. I could not express in words the depth of my feelings at the time or what I was dealing with, let alone consider what I needed. I was so focused on getting through each moment that reaching out to anyone felt like an additional burden. The weight of it went beyond words such as sad, fearful, lost, alone, or in despair. The best way I can describe it is to imagine being buried under a pile of rubble. Each piece of that rubble was a different emotion or concern. I had just enough space under the pile to breathe from moment to moment, but not enough strength to call for help or to move the rubble myself. In an odd way, the rubble itself became comforting, protecting me while slowly crushing me. Story 70. What is the point? At best, they give me advice I cannot use because it requires me to get past my anxiety. At worst, they dismiss how I feel. Story 71. They are so consumed with their own lives. I do not want to burden them. I am not ready to deal with everything yet. Denial is powerful. Surgery is scary and unaffordable. I could bankrupt myself and still live, or have surgery and lose everything. I cannot deal with it right now. To be honest, this is the first time I have told anyone about the recent medical choices I am facing. I have to wait for more scans in a few weeks. Maybe I will tell them after that. I do not want to ruin the holidays. They do not have money to help. All my friends are struggling like me. Story 72. It usually does not help and requires more effort than I have when I am not okay. Story 73. Because nobody else is okay either, and I don't want to burden them further. Story 74. Who would care anyway? Probably only my daughters, but one is 4 years old and the other is 2 months old, so they wouldn't understand. Story 75. Opening yourself up to others is a gamble. Even those you trust can use what you confide in them to hurt you later. Story 76. I tried. They said they did not have time to talk and did not respond. I guess asking, "I'm having a hard time. Can we chat for a bit?" was too needy and overbearing. Story 77. I have not been okay for years. I cannot bring myself to burden people with my problems again, so I save them for therapy. Story 78. I grew up with an adoptive mother who repeatedly told me, "No one cares how you feel. You're too sensitive. You think you have problems now. Wait until you're older. You were so good until you turned 12, and then you turned rotten." A teenager starting to mature, think independently, and expand their environment. Who would have thought? Both parents heavily favored their biological child, far beyond a golden child, more like a platinum child. Additional note: feeling safe enough to tell someone, only to have them use the information against you later, or to have them try to traumatize you or minimize what happened. For example, "You think you have it bad? Listen to what happened to me." Gross exaggeration. "You lost 3 limbs in an explosion, and I got a paper cut at work and chipped a fingernail." Story 79. They are not going to want to do anything to make me okay, so why waste the time? Story 80. I was taught by my parents that not being okay was a moral failing and my own problem, and that to be worthy of help I had to become okay on my own first. My father would literally tell me to pull myself up by my bootstraps, and my mother would have long sessions tearing down my character, pointing out my faults and failings to show that my not being okay was my fault, an unconscionable burden on her, and possibly done out of malice on my part. As an adult, it is hard to get past that and admit you are not okay, much less ask for help when you need it. Story 81. I didn't even know I wasn't okay. How can you put words to a feeling you don't understand? Story 82. Most people do not understand and instead respond with platitudes that make me feel worse. Story 83. Because I'm too proud, and if I cannot solve my problem, I must suffer the consequences. Story 84. I see no reason it would change anything for the better. Story 85. I do not want to be a burden on anyone. What are they going to do anyway? Story 86. If no one knows, they cannot use it against you later. I tell no one. Story 87. I did not realize how unwell I was. I knew I was not okay, but I tend to minimize how I feel, so I did not realize how bad it had become until things started to get better. I also do not know how to ask for help. Story 88. I am never fully okay. My disability wears on me. People do not fully understand, and explaining it is exhausting. Story 89. Because this is part of a standard greeting and should not be taken literally. Story 90. Whenever I open up to someone, it eventually gets used as ammunition, so I would rather keep it to myself than waste my breath. Story 91. Maybe it's a generational thing, but we don't do that. Who exactly would I tell, and what could anyone do about it? I have always handled things on my own, whether good or bad. I'm not okay and never was, but I have learned to adapt and not complain about it to everyone. I also make fun of every horrible life situation, the "if you don't laugh you'll cry" idea. I don't cry. I deal with it until it's over and move on to the next abomination life throws at me. Story 92. Because I am a man, there are expectations that I should suck it up and push through it. Story 93. No. Other than polite responses, people don't actually care, at least in my experience. Women call you weak for showing emotion or abusive if you stand up for yourself. There isn't any winning for me yet. My dad asked me what I wanted for Christmas and birthday 6 days apart. I told him I'd be fine and didn't need anything. He said he couldn't help but get me something, that I deserved it. That's still fucking with me weeks later. I'm so used to people walking all over me. Story 94. I felt it was useless to tell people what was happening inside me. Story 95. I just do not see how it would help. They cannot help me. The only thing that would help is not happening, so why tell anyone? I would rather put on a stony facade, listen to other people's problems, and pretend until I cannot. Story 96. I did not tell my father that I was on the brink of ending my life after my mother died last year, because I knew he was suffering as well. Why add to his burden? I went to therapy instead, and it helped immensely. Story 97. Go tell that to your therapist is all I got from everyone. Story 98. I think most people do not care about you. They cannot help you, and you will only seem weaker in their eyes. I do not like anyone looking at me like that. Story 99. Because no one cares. They are sick of hearing negativity. I am not okay. It is a horrible time for me, but at the same time I need to say it is what it is. Story 100. I did not tell anyone for a long time. I suffered alone and finally went to a therapist, who told me I should tell my family. It turned out they did not care. Story 101. Because I am a man, I either receive apathy or am told to suck it up. Story 102. No one cared. They shrugged it off when I did, so why bother? Story 103. Because I'm male, we've had it drummed into us that our feelings do not matter and that we should just get a grip. Story 104. You tell me I have no reason to feel upset, angry, sad, depressed, anxious, tired, sick, or stressed whenever I'm not smiling or making jokes. Story 105. Who is going to care? My mental health is my own burden. Everyone is struggling. There is nobody left to hold me up. I will just get through it. Story 106. My reasons for not being okay were not accepted. As a big, strong, hairy man, I was not allowed to be vulnerable. Surface Pressure has been the theme song of my life since 1990. Encanto did not exist then, and the only reason anyone cared about the song is that the character is a woman. If Luisa had been Luis, there likely never would have been a song because men are expected to handle all of that anyway. Story 107. When I say it out loud, it validates it and makes it real. I know it's not healthy, but hiding it away spares people from my trauma dump. Story 108. When I do, I just hear it could be worse. Nobody wants to deal with anything. Story 109. Everyone I work with and all my friends are mandatory reporters, and I cannot afford a grippy sock vacation. Story 110. I cannot trust my family because they would just throw it back in my face. Story 111. I get ignored, called a maricon and a faggot, worthless and pathetic, and treated like a failure. On what goddamn planet am I going to say I'm not okay? I'll keep the fake smile and happy, idiotic attitude so they don't hurt me more. Story 112. Worrying about your anxiety often makes it harder to talk about. Story 113. So few people honestly care. Everybody is going through difficulties, and I am not going to burden someone else with my problems. Story 114. Worrying about anxiety often makes talking about it worse. Story 115. I do not like burdening people with my problems, and I have always been the type to try to handle things on my own. Besides, on the very rare occasions when I did try asking for help, which meant things were really bad, I was ignored or unheard. So I do not bother with that anymore, even in the darkest times. At least I have one person in my life who is there for me. I do not know what I would do without him. Story 116. I only have a few friends who can be here for my not okay moments. It's pretty intense. Story 117. I do not have anyone to talk to about my true feelings because I am not close to anyone. I have often had negative experiences in the past when I opened up. Story 118. A simple embarrassment. I feel like I was raised better and wasted opportunities through dumb choices and actions. It is still tough to accept certain things and move on, but after many years I have finally learned to do so despite myself. I hope you do the same. Story 119. I don't want to worry my parents, who are learning the signs. At work, the best I can hope for is someone saying, well, take it easy, okay? At worst I get a death glare and a 5-minute break. It kind of works because I get angrier at the person who gives the death glare than at myself, and the focus of my panic shifts. I am not panicking because I am a terrible person. I am angry because my colleague has no empathy. They also seem to expect me to be able to fix myself. Story 120. I am told to communicate. I express myself and then get chewed out, lectured, or yelled at. For hills that are not worth dying on, I find it simpler to keep my mouth shut. Story 121. Admitting you are not able to cope feels embarrassing and weak. Story 122. Most of them will either not care or actively use it against me in an exploitative way. Story 123. I told many people. I should have chosen medical treatment instead. I wasted 20 years of my life wanting to die. I'm sorry you're feeling this way. If you are in immediate danger, call your local emergency number now. In the United States, call or text 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you are elsewhere, contact local emergency services or a nearby crisis hotline. If you'd like, I can help you find support. Story 124. I tried multiple times and always received the same answer: see a therapist. Why tell someone if they only say you shouldn't bother them, while someone else has the same worries? Story 125. I often don't share because I feel like no one is truly listening. Story 126. People either do not care or cannot help. Usually both. Sometimes situations are just difficult, and no one likes to be around a negative person. Story 127. I once told my sister that I was close to ending my life. She said she would not feel bad if I died and that I only had myself to blame. I am sorry you are feeling this way. Are you safe right now? If you are thinking about harming yourself or are in immediate danger, please call your local emergency number now. If you are in the United States, call or text 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you are elsewhere, please contact local emergency services or your local crisis line. If you can, reach out to someone you trust right now. I can help you find resources or contact someone if you would like. Story 128. Whenever I tell people, they just say I will be better. No one actually cares. Story 129. Because it takes a lot of effort to say that, and they often respond with and then rant about their own feelings or issues. The effort I put in and the response I receive are so mismatched that I prefer not to say anything. Story 130. The things I worried about weren't worth much when we were young. Now that I'm older, I express my feelings as they arise because I'm done hiding them. Story 131. When I tried to say I thought I had an anxiety disorder as a teenager, I was told to pray about it and never received any help. Story 132. I don't know if other people's families do this, but both mine and my husband's tend to use whatever personal information you give them against you at some point. Therefore, I only share my personal struggles with those closest to me whom I trust. Story 133. I think for most people being not okay is not a one-time event but lasts over a period of time. Even if you tell someone once or twice, you may feel you cannot keep saying it because people tire of hearing it, and you fear it will push them away, which is the last thing you need. Story 134. What did you mean by me tack? Possible corrections. Mistake. Me time. My task. Mental health, or my talk. Which should I use? Story 135. When it was happening, I was 18 and in my freshman year of college. My parents limited me to only 2 or 3 phone calls per week. If I called at any other time, they would ignore the phone. I also had to ask permission to come home for the weekend. I had no way to express to them how bad it was. Story 136. When I was a child, I was not allowed to have any problems. I was treated as if I had done something to deserve everything that happened to me and had no right to complain. I was not a bad kid. I simply had undiagnosed attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I was severely bullied at school and had no friends. I would come home terrified of my mother for very good reasons. I was not allowed to make any mistakes or have accidents, and sometimes I was not even allowed to exist. My mother was often not home when I arrived or when I woke up, so as a small child I mostly took care of myself. I was already struggling and eventually, I broke. I was scared, anxious, and so lonely it physically hurt. I began vomiting every morning several times, and no one cared until it happened on weekends and my mother became angry because it was ruining her weekends. The main response I received was being screamed at and told it was all in my head as I vomited. This was partly true because I have cyclic vomiting syndrome triggered by severe anxiety, and it is hell. I was never hugged or told I was doing well. My mother only yelled and hit me. When I tried to get help at school after a bad incident, I was told to stop making up lies for attention. I was 6. No one believed me. As an adult, I hide most of this because it upsets my boyfriend and he does not want to deal with it. No one else knows. Everyone only knows that I hate where I live. I have no friends here and nothing to do, and I miss my friends badly. I said that once and left it at that. I have been away from them for a year and a half. I have seen some friends 6 or 7 times and others not at all. I went from spending multiple evenings a week and weekends with them to nothing, and that hurt. This happened because a very scary person moved into my shared house and drove me and the other housemate out within a month. I had lived there for 3 years and the landlord said he would not do anything unless the man physically hurt me. The man would have if I had not made myself scarce because he was trying to get me. Story 137. No one cares about you unless it is also about them. Story 138. I never have. I can't convince myself that I feel bad enough to talk about it with anyone. Story 139. It was hard, but when I was at my most vulnerable, I was supported. That helped and showed me that I did not have to go through this alone. Even though I grew up with close family members suffering from severe mental illness, I did not want to be a burden or disappointment to anyone. Now I have learned my lesson and would ask for help when needed. Sometimes it is like that until we are ready to change. Story 140. Trust. You have to trust the person you are opening up to. If you cannot, only confide in someone you will never see again. Story 141. I have told them before and nothing changes. It is easier to struggle in silence than to face the disappointment and hurt of being vulnerable and ignored. Story 142. For regulatory reasons, I work in a field where this could cost you your job. Story 143. They do not want to know. I do not wish to burden them. Anytime I try, it is not even acknowledged, and the conversation is directed elsewhere. I know my place. Story 144. I am never okay, no matter how hard I try. I know that if I tire of feeling this way, others will tire of hearing about it. Story 145. My parents always jumped to conclusions, interrupting me halfway through what I was trying to say. Let's just say I was raised to suffer through it. Story 146. I was told to just get over it, move on, and stop feeling sorry for myself. I was upset because my husband of 16 years had a romantic and sexual affair with a coworker. I learned not to share with that parent. Story 147. I got tired of being told I was just doing it for attention. Story 148. Because no one ever truly understands you. If someone says they do, they are not being honest. How can someone who is not you understand the exact feelings you have unless they are you feeling them? Story 149. When I did, it did not matter, so I just gave up telling. Story 150. The last time I told anyone I felt suicidal, I was sent to the psychiatric ward. I was 14 and had to spend 16 days without my parents, to whom I had become very attached. It was torture. Now I do not tell anyone anything because I cannot trust them not to report me to my parents. Story 151. I did. I was told other people have it worse, and my problems are not that bad. Story 152. When I have tried, it has either done nothing or made things worse. So now I handle it on my own and hide as much as I can or need to. Story 153. I felt embarrassed when I reached that level at one point in my life. I had always been the person who did everything right, but I realized that what was expected of me and how I should live did not make me happy. Now I live on my own terms. I have less financial means, but how much is your sense of well-being and happiness worth? I think it is priceless. Story 154. When I tried to tell some people, I was told that everyone was in the same boat, just at different depths, and some would launch into why things were worse for them. Simply put, I gave up. Things have moved on since then, and I am now surrounded by people who know me well and are incredibly supportive. Story 155. I felt like my problems weren't real enough, and I knew the support would be minimal. Life isn't always like the movies where someone swoops in. Sometimes the only one who can save you is yourself. Story 156. No one cared when they saw me drowning, so I learned to swim. It was always, When you are done drowning, can you do something for me? I swam harder. Resentment turned to hate, and now I prefer to be alone. It is easier to swim in the kiddie pool than in the shark tank. A psychiatrist recognized some of my issues and prescribed a life jacket in case the water gets too deep. I conclude that no one ever loved me more than they needed me. I am almost 50, and love has only ever been used against me. Story 157. I'm a big guy, supposed to take care of everything by myself for everyone around me. Story 158. I spent months asking for help and nobody cared. Why would they suddenly start caring because I tried? Story 159. Because I learned at an early age that doing so made things 1,000 times worse. Story 160. Reading these comments makes me sad for everyone who is suffering. I have felt that no one cares at times in my life, but then I remember others likely feel the same. I think about the mental anguish I hear and feel around me and wonder how people have become so troubled, lonely, divided, and disconnected. Growing up was not like this, although it was not perfect. I feel our Western society is burdened with financial worries, childhood trauma, adult trauma, broken families, and more. So many people lack the bandwidth to cope with anything beyond their current struggles. I do not have great solutions, but if we each made small efforts to improve our corner of the world, we might begin to heal over time. Story 161. The ones I did try to tell left. They said, oh, changed the topic, ended the conversation, and pretended not to hear. It is still a hard barrier to cross with my husband sometimes. I freeze. It is so much harder to face when it is someone I am supposed to trust with that. Story 162. Usually, when I try to speak about anything, the people I am talking to seem to stop listening and start doing other things, so I trail off and they do not even notice. Story 163. I have done this countless times. No one has helped or listened because no one cares. Story 164. For what? There is no reason to do that. They become uncomfortable and start pulling away from you. It is much easier to stay quiet. Story 165. There was nothing they could do to change the situation or help. What would be the point of telling them? Story 166. You're either lying for attention or whining. How dare you not be instantly happy the moment I command it? Why do you have to be an inconvenience for me? Story 167. There is no point. Telling others would not make me feel better. In fact, it might make it worse. Story 168. I am a relatively average American family man. It is at the core of my being to endure hardship for those I love without complaining, for fear of losing them. Story 169. It is obvious. My heart is on my sleeve. I recently lost someone who was extremely important to me. Anyone who has to ask is not worth telling. Story 170. I was brought up to be tough and stoic, like everyone in my family. We were raised with a German heritage in Wisconsin. Story 171. I don't have anyone in my life who I feel actually cares. I have tried to talk about how I feel in the past, and it has always been invalidated, dismissed, or turned back on me. It is just easier not to give people the opportunity to disappoint. Story 172. Once I told him, I have an invisible condition, and when I explained why I could not do something, he called me a liar. He still cannot tell me its name or how it affects me. Story 173. Saying, I'm not okay, is unhelpful. No one knows what to do with that. Saying, I'm not okay, and here is where I need support. Can you help me? Is much more likely to generate a supportive response because people do not have to figure out how to help. That said, you still risk rejection, and who can fucking figure out what they need when they are not okay anyway? Life is hard. We all need support. Story 174. I might not be okay right now, but I will be soon. Story 175. Because I am okay. I just do the things that people who aren't okay normally do. Story 176. What are they going to do? Are they going to tell me everything will be okay or that it will get better? That doesn't really help. Story 177. Every time I ask for help, I either get ignored or people help briefly and then leave my life. I have learned that if I want to keep any kind of social circle, my mental and emotional struggles are my own. I can be struggling and isolated too. I would rather just be struggling, thanks. Story 178. I have no fucking clue who I am without my pain and anger. There is nothing else. Story 179. I grew up in a household where everyone was on edge, aggressive, or depressed all the time. My parents, who worked in social work and psychology, regularly discussed other people's problems as if our family life were normal. They often analyzed other people's behavior, suggested trauma-related explanations, and spoke as if they were intellectually superior. They sympathized with people who had been assaulted as if it could not happen to us. When I was devastated by my mother's outbursts, and they knew but did not protect me, I felt I had to deal with it on my own. When my friend's father hit her, my parents analyzed her behavior afterward but, as far as I could tell, did not offer help to the girl's mother. I concluded that this was not serious enough for them to intervene. So when I was assaulted, I expected them to notice. At that age, I did not realize that parents are not always the best people to talk to. I waited, but I got worse and acted out more, which only made my mother's behavior worse. She never asked if anything was wrong. I told some friends, but they were too young and sheltered to do more than be shocked and say they were sorry. I felt like I annoyed them, so I pretended to be fine because I worried they would not love me if I was not. I felt scared and unprotected. At some point, I met a man much older than me who made me feel safe. I opened up to him about the assault. He groomed me, talked about marrying me, and did not want or know how to discuss the issues. I was half enamored with him and half still waiting for my parents to rescue me or at least react. My parents had one short conversation and nothing more. I started lying more, saying I was staying at a friend's house and so on. Only one sibling was outraged and offered to confront him with friends, but my parents stopped them. I felt I could not tell anyone because, in my mind, they would either ignore it, use it against me, distance themselves, complain about my dark mood, or adopt a superior analytical attitude. I did not trust anyone except a few friends I did not want to scare away. Pretending to be happy was and is exhausting, but it felt better than worrying that classmates and friends would hate, leave, or pity me. Story 180. Because if I were to open up to them, the second I am off the phone with my parents, the entire extended family would know about it. Aunts, uncles, a cousin I have not seen since I was 12 who became a porn star, and so on. My parents, meaning specifically my mother, have this belief that everyone knows everything about each other's health, physical or mental. I have repeatedly asked my mother not to give me updates on distant relatives' health concerns. First, I do not need to know. Second, they did not consent to have their medical information shared with me. If I say anything to my parents, I will be treated the same way. Just because we are blood related does not mean they are entitled to know everything. Story 181. It's just easier to pretend. People have their own problems and I don't want to burden them too. My wee granny always said, if everyone threw their problems out onto the street, you would take yours back. Story 182. I only stopped lying to myself after the suicide attempt. Many people hate their jobs, have trouble sleeping, drink too much, or have headaches. I told myself things were not that bad. It was not like I would kill myself. One day I had a headache, took a couple of pills, and realized that while 2 could stop my head from hurting, all of them could stop my life. Second thoughts led to the hospital, a 72-hour hold, and the end of my ability to convince myself that nothing was wrong. Story 183. Sometimes when you are not okay, admitting it to someone who blames themselves causes you to spend your energy helping them instead of taking care of yourself, which brings you down further. Story 184. They think I am just a relaxed person who has no feelings. If you know. Story 185. My husband is super supportive and always has great advice. The last time I tried to open up to my mom, she told me, "Oh, you're fine." Story 186. Knowing someone is going through their own problems and that they only ask how you are after venting their whole life to you as a courtesy can feel awkward. Maybe they are genuine, but even so, I hate to put any more on their plate. So I sit in silence. Story 187. They do not care and they do not listen. I am the unwitting therapist who has to listen to everyone, solve all of their problems, and come up with solutions. If I do not, they throw tantrum pity parties. When they are finally done and I think it is my turn, Everyone scatters like roaches in sudden light, and all that can be heard are crickets chirping. I have only had one emotional rock in my life I could hold while I cried, and she would not try to get away. When I was feeling down, I did not have to call her. She would come running and let me hold her for as long as I needed. When she was dying, she would not let me hold her because she knew it would be too much for me. When she died and I found her, my heart broke in a way that has not healed yet. With my rock gone, I could only confide in what I had before her, the vastness of the universe. My precious cat, ing Bing, I miss you so much and think about you to this day. You were my rock, and I still love you very much. Story 188. It's always been my fault somehow, so I just stopped talking about it. Story 189. No one cares. You need to become mentally strong and resilient on your own, without support from others. Story 190. I told everyone when I became ill after my mother died. Nobody came to help me. Almost 10 years later, I am in severe chronic pain. I care for my disabled son, and even my stepfather, with whom we live, never offers to help or give me a day off. I do not say anything because everyone in my family thinks I am being dramatic. I have become an alcoholic because I have no relief. My medications are being cut off. My pain worsens as I age, and nobody cares. So why should I say anything or care about their opinions? I have gone no contact with my aunt and cousin, and they have not even noticed. Story 191. I have had anxiety for so long that I thought it was normal. It was not until I became completely irrational that I realized I needed help. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.